What's up, everybody? Once again, back with another episode of Woo Fantasy right here with you, guy, the Roto Superstar, of course, brought to you as always by Rotoballer, rotoballer.com. Definitely go check us out there, rotoballer.com. Promo code Woo Fantasy with that discount on all the premium content on the website there. So check us out. And of course, back again with another show this week. Normally joined by the co-host Nick Heffley, but he is not here with us tonight. I've got a special guest, my man, the guy from Fade the Noise, Mr. Derek Brown. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. Just trying to stay warm in this weird spring cold snap. So just rocking my hoodie. I'm just getting ready for the NFL draft. Good Lord, it can't get here fast enough. I feel like every day out on social media has been a small adventure to this point. Now because we're all out of talking points and it's all just narrative season. But yes. Doing good, Brandon. Thank you for having me, man.
Man, it's a pleasure of mine. Definitely like to get all the guys, colleagues. And I mean, we've exchanged pleasantries over the years through Twitter, and good to finally actually get you on here and talk to you. Like you said, draft is a week away. It's absolutely wild. I'm ready for it to get here, just like you. And you mentioned it too. I mean, the narratives that are being spewed on Twitter daily at this point, it seems like instead of us trying to find a common ground with where we think the values are on some of these players, we're trying to tear these guys down and nitpick and find the bad things with these guys at this point in time. I don't get it. I mean, what is the deal with it? I think it's just, at this point, we're just looking for things to talk about, correct?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's just scratching for talking points. That's all it is. I mean, just take today, for instance. Now we get rumors that Justin Fields has had epilepsy and seizures and all kinds of stuff, or at least a disorder. And it's like, okay, but he's played collegiately. He played in high school. He's been on medication and hasn't had any issues. So, okay. And so, non-news item, but that scrolls across the timeline because that's where we're at, Brandon. Like, it's basically we've run out of stuff to talk about to this point in mass media, and they're just scratching for talking points, trying to fill the airwaves and trying to drum up some type of talking points. And it's just like, look, like, you can still talk about, like, teams, fits, rumors, whatever you want to talk about, and actually talk about things that have some substance besides half of the crap that's floating out there on a daily basis.
Yeah, and even it extends into the actual NFL itself because, we did have the news come down the pike earlier today. The Eagles open quarterback competition. I mean, can Joe Flacco versus Jalen Hurts, that feels like that is a battle that I'm ready to watch come training camp time.
I put it out on Twitter today, and I'm going to sit here and restate it right here. Believing that Jalen Hurts is actually fighting for a job with Joe Flacco is like believing Miles Sanders is fighting for a job with Elijah Holyfield. Those two things are exactly the same amount of truth, and it's total bullshit. It's absolute and total bullshit. Like, and then you hear 10 minutes later, because then the other tweet floats out there about the head coach is just saying, okay, well, I mean, I haven't really decided on any starter at any position, and every position's a competition. And I'm like, oh, okay, so the entire thing was just a non-news item. I mean, we knew that from the jump, but it's nice to hear that confirmed. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, I mean, he has to get them in the same room first and play a little, rock, paper, scissors with the guys to feel which one's going to be his QB1. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about rookies probably here in a little bit and stuff. You got to set Joe Flacco up for success. I mean, the guy that is going to automatically play scissors every time, and if he wins, he gets the quarterback position, you can't set him up for failure. So, yes. I mean, get Flacco the downfield weapon. We know he needs that, right?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, his yards per attempt over his career has been one of the best in the league. So we're going to, of course, set him up for success.
It's just craziness.
It's narrative season.
Insanity. Yep.
It's narrative season. That's what it boils down to at this point in time, like you mentioned. And, of course, we're going to talk some rookies here. And we'll start off with the quarterback position. That seems to be the kind of the hot button issue over the course of the last few days with Twitter and everything. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence out there defending himself through Twitter as well, putting out statements and defending his
Oh
will to
gosh.
play football. But we know he's going to be the number one pick in the draft. That's all set in stone at this point in time. After that, we feel we have a good feeling right now with Zach Wilson at 2 to the Jets. But after that, I mean, it seems like it's an open field day at this point in time. How are we viewing these quarterbacks? Let's say after Trevor Lawrence, he's QB1 right off the top of the board.
Yeah.
I think myself and you, we're kind of in the similar points with Zach Wilson and Justin Fields debate. I think we both have Fields at 2 in our rankings, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for me, Lawrence, and I tier them as well. Lawrence and Fields are in the same exact tier. QB1, QB2. But I look at them in exactly the same tier. Fields falls to a really good landing spot, which we've heard smoke on all kinds of different places he can go. If he falls to a really good landing spot, if somebody were to want to draft Justin Fields in a Superflex league over Trevor Lawrence, I won't fight you at all. I won't fight you one bit about that. But yes, they're definitively in a tier by themselves for me over the next 3 guys. And after the top 5 quarterbacks, I don't really care. Yeah. I don't care about Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask is the next, purgatory quarterback. He's the next Drew Lock. He's the next quarterback after 3 years. You're sitting there saying, why in the absolute hell did we draft this guy in the 2nd or 3rd round? I don't know. Wait, that was your call. No, that was your... No. Well, my call. I didn't do that. And everybody's running out the room sitting here so they don't get pinned with it. So I think it's the top 5 guys for me. What order you want to put them in. But for me, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields are in a tier by themselves. QB1, QB2. And then the other 3 guys fall in the next tier. And I'm tiering them together because it's an interesting mix of ceiling and floor combinations and kind of what you're getting in that grab bag. And with those guys, look, I am lower than consensus on Zach Wilson. I see the ceiling, but I am willing, and not everybody's willing, I'm willing to acknowledge the floor with him as well. And the same thing with Trey Lance, man. I think that all 3 of these guys are in very, very interesting spots because we have long track records for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields starting at major programs and playing extremely well. Now, you go to these next 3 quarterbacks, 1 starting year, 1 starting year, 1 starting year. And everyone had different modicums of success, different competition levels, different skill sets. And where you want to put these guys, that's fine. I would understand anybody ranking any mishmash of those 3 players. For me personally, it's Zach Wilson, it's Trey Lance, and it's Mac Jones. And Mac Jones is my QB5. And that's not because I hate the guy. I just don't see the ceiling, whereas the other 2 guys, I'm going to rank them above Mac Jones because I think that if they hit their ceilings, you're going to wish you had them and be glad that you did over a Mac Jones, which Mac Jones for me doesn't have that same type of ceiling unless, Brandon, he becomes an elite processor of the field, the playbook, decision maker, all these type of things, because for us in fantasy, he doesn't have the rushing equity. Doesn't have it. Even if you chop off his bottom half and stick him on top of a 4-wheeler and he could throw and then just still run, move around at 25 miles an hour, that's the only scenario where he has the same type of mobility as the other 2 guys.
I will give you that. Yeah, he does not have that rushing capability. We've seen him take off from time to time, but he does look like, he's stuck in the mud a little bit. But how worried are you with Mac Jones? We saw what Tua did coming into the league last year. I mean, some of it might have been, coming back from that hip injury, he was maybe a little bit slow to kind of pick up the processing speed of the game as at this next level. But a lot of the narrative with Tua last year was that, okay, he was surrounded by this otherworldly talent, and that just brought him to that next level. Do we feel like that might be the case with Mac Jones as well?
I think that Mac Jones is going to be a middle to lower end starting quarterback in the NFL. And that could be for a long time. But do I think that, like I said, unless he is able to access that elite type of processing, and is in a scheme that is perfectly tailored for him with really good skill players around him, I could see Mac Jones. For me, he's a quarterback that is the sum of the parts. Now, where he goes and what those parts look like, there are concerns for Alabama because it's freaking Alabama, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Mac Jones' talent is legit. Like, I think that he is good enough to succeed in the NFL. The question is, what bucket do you put him in the NFL? Like, do I think that he is at all worthy of being a top 5 selection in the NFL draft? Hell no. Do I think that he's worthy of being a top 10, top 15 selection based off of the position that he plays, what he did at Alabama, what he's put on tape, and the skills that he does possess? Yes. You want to take him in the 10 to 15 range? That's fine. No issues there. My problem with it becomes is that with his talent and the skills that he does possess and what he has put on film, as good as he is, I mean, like, you can go to PFF, you can go to all these other different sites, look at all of his stats. He's been good versus pressure. He's been good on play action. He's been good deep and with adjusted completion percentage. All these different boxes he checks. Can't fight anybody on that.
No.
But the other thing about it is, what situation is he going to go to? Is he going to go get stuck behind a bad offensive line? Which, I mean, or is he going to get put with, and I'm talking about he's more of a sum of all of the parts type of player. Hell, we've seen Andy Dalton have really damn good years for Cincinnati when everybody just magically was healthy. And Andy Dalton is not a world beater. Andy Dalton was one of those quarterbacks that could get you to the freaking playoffs, but past that, you got to have a really good rest of the team around him if you're going to have any kind of aspirations, even to fall ass backwards into a Super Bowl. So that's kind of the tier that I put Mac Jones in. He's a sum of the parts quarterback. Are the Alabama concerns real? Yes. I mean, they're real. I mean, but do I think that he's done enough to garner the fact that he can be a competent NFL starting quarterback? Yes. Just depends on what bucket you put him in and how high you think he could be.
And now I think that's where the question lies right now. You see so many of the mock drafts that are out at this point in time. Some people still have him in the mix there at number 3 to the 49ers. I still am of the mindset that I think that's where Justin Fields lands. I think that's going to be the selection there, but a lot of people are still pushing the Mac Jones issue there. So let's say Mac Jones does go to the 49ers. Level of success as the San Francisco 49er quarterback moving forward, how would you rate that?
I mean, I think he's going to be a better version of Jimmy G. I think for fantasy purposes, you're going to be staring at somewhere a mid QB2. And a lot of this just comes down to, if you go back and I went through coaching profiles for FTN last year. So I went back through 3 to 4 years of data on quarterbacks, on coaches and offensive systems, and basically not only where the targets go and things of that nature, because there's a lot of noise there. Okay. Yeah. But looking at passing rates, looking at what these teams and these coaches like to do in the red zone and stuff, and some of that is transferable. Some of that changes year to year based off of the skill players that you have and how you're going to utilize them. But there are some things to glean from there. And if you look all the way back through Kyle Shanahan's history, if they are able to run the ball, if he is able to run the ball with his offense, he's going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Simply put. And it's going to cap the passing attempts for whoever the hell is under center. So if he goes to San Francisco, can he have spike weeks? Are we going to sit here and talk about him in DFS, depending on who they're playing? Sure. Am I going to look at him as anything more than a mid QB2, and you're really just going to be streaming him because I'm not depending on him on a weekly basis? That's where he's going to lie. That's just... It's a fact based off of the system that he's in, and as long as San Francisco can run the ball, which they're going to have the offensive line to do it, if they have anybody that's capable with any type of juice in that backfield that can run the ball, they're going to run the ball, and it's going to cap the passing volume no matter who's under center.
Yes. Now, as far as the value, let's go back to 2 with Zach Wilson to the Jets. We both have him ranked underneath. We don't have as high a grade with Zach Wilson coming into the draft, but it seems like it's bona fide he's going to the Jets at this point in time. What's our success rate with Zach Wilson with the New York Jets and those weapons?
I think that Zach Wilson is going to be put in a precarious situation, and Zach Wilson is going to he's going to be asked to do things that he hasn't been asked to until this point, and that's face a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And for everybody that wants to talk about it, and it's been thrown out there, and everybody already knows where I'm going to go and talk about that he hasn't seen pressure and blah, 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 blah. That's true. It's absolutely true. The thing that's also not brought up enough, Brandon, is the fact that before this last season in 2020, Zach Wilson versus pressure was terrible.
Yes.
41 passer rating. He was in the 70s the other year prior to that, if you even discount the injury year that he had with the shoulder. So we've seen a short sample size of Zach Wilson good versus pressure in one season, and now he's going to go to the Jets, who their offensive line is not fantastic. They're one of the worst in the league last year in adjusted sack rates. They're not projecting to be any freaking better this year. And my whole fear for Zach Wilson is he's being put into a situation that is going to be immensely different, both competition level, speed of the game, adjustment, the hype of being, and this is a big media city, massive market. And he is going to be under the microscope from day one. He's going to be under pressure. He's going to be under duress. And even if you want to talk about scheme and getting the ball out of his hands and run after the catch and stuff like that, the skill players he has around him are not fantastic. They don't have a running back that has any type of juice on that damn roster right now. You want to talk about the pass catchers? Look, I'm sorry. The skill positions of like Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, at least at this point, and Chris Herndon, that's not striking beer in anybody's freaking heart. Yeah. So Zach Wilson's facing an uphill climb, man. And I think you're looking at a quarterback that everybody talks about his ability to play off the script, his aggressiveness downfield. When you put him into a situation where he's going to face more pressure than he has faced his entire collegiate career, with lesser skill players, higher competition, faster game, and a big, big microscope on him, does this all sound like a situation where Zach Wilson is going to ball out in his rookie year? If he does it, kudos to him. It's really, really, really hard to see. And I'm not hating on the guy. It's just, there are a lot of concern factors here for him as a prospect and the situation he's being thrown into from day one. So I think that all of the hype, if the Jets are smart, they try to dial all this stuff back for him. They try to go run heavy. You see Saleh try to lean on their defense, and they really dumb things down for Zach Wilson in year one and try to protect the kid. Because past that, he could go out there and have like 2 or 3 interceptions every single game for the first few weeks, and people are sitting here calling for his head by week 4, and the New York market's turning on the kid. Yeah. I don't want to see that happen. But there's a lot of concerns here, man. A lot of concerns.
And I think he has that's one thing I think he's got going for him going into the situation as opposed to a Sam Darnold over the last few years, is he has a little bit more moxie to him. A little bit more of a chip on his shoulder, a little more attitude, I think, that this kid plays with. I've kind of likened him a little bit similar to Baker Mayfield in that aspect as far as how he approaches the game. So I think that'll be in his favor going into the market and going into the situation. But I'm like you, I think he's going to be in for a rough rookie season. The weapons aren't there to really support the skill set and what they're going to ask him to do this year. But they don't have that running game either to lean on at this point in time either. And that is another situation. That's a team that's going to be looking at running back in this draft too. But the wild card out of this top 5, like we've mentioned here, is Trey Lance. I mean, we don't really have a firm footing on where we think he's going to land right now, but I think he's going to be very scheme dependent. It depends on where he's going to go. I mean, there's been talks of him going to Atlanta, sitting behind Matt Ryan for a year. Mm-hmm. There's talks of him going to the 49ers. There's talks of some teams moving up to grab him. There's talks of him going to Denver. So not knowing the situation where he's going to land currently right now, how do we feel about Trey Lance and his projected value coming in?
Trey Lance is a wild card. He is every single bit of that, both in landing spots and as well as his skill set, man. I mean, look, the kid's got talent.
Yeah.
I think that some of the aspects of his game are a little bit overblown. One, against FCS competition, if you look on the surface and Trey Lance's numbers look sparkling, no interceptions. You can sit here and talk about how he could throw deep and all these different things. You could talk about passer ratings on all different levels and how good he is. The other part of that is that the context to that is passer ratings are extremely skewed when you don't throw any freaking interceptions.
Yeah.
So they're all going to look beautiful. Doesn't matter. So
it's that shiny Madden perfect rating that you have.
Yeah, I mean that's it is what it is. I mean, we're trying to give context to numbers. So you look at you dice up the other parts of his game. If you look at deep adjusted completion percentage and his adjusted completion percentages, the passer ratings are through the freaking roof, man. But if you look at his completion percentages, they paint a very, 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 very different picture about Trey Lance. He's middle of the pack or lower end of the pack on all quarterbacks with 50 or more dropbacks, 200 or more dropbacks. However you want to splice it, Trey Lance on completion percentages is low. So looking at his skill set, a lot of people term him as raw. I prefer to use I coin it as he's inconsistent. He's very, very inconsistent. He would go out there and throw a dime, and the next play, you'll see him sail a ball. And now we're talking about competition differences from where he played at to the NFL level. And he played extremely well versus FCS. And I think that we're talking about Zach Wilson being protected. I think if Trey Lance sees the field in his first season, I think that we're going to see him protected. I think that you're going to see a team try to dial things back, make it simple for him, run a lot of things off of play action, utilize his legs, give him easy reads, incorporate some RPO concepts, and some timing-based things. Try to get, basically cut the field in half for him and make this a lot more simple for him. And I like Trey Lance. I think the ceiling is extremely high. My concerns for him come from the inconsistencies that I saw on film and through the numbers, as well as I think that his skills are, he's got really, I mean, he's got skills. I'm not saying that he's not. You can't be talked about inside of being a top 5 pick in the NFL draft and not be toolsy. But to the point that we're talking about him having just a rocket arm, and I hear people talking about it's just as good as Josh Allen. It is not. It is not. I've watched multiple times on deep balls on film where receivers are slowing up a little bit to sit here and track the ball in the air.
Yeah.
Josh Allen was overthrowing mofos in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And not just because of accuracy issues and things of that nature. It's because the guy has a freaking hose. Trey Lance has a strong arm. Is it as strong as people talk about? No. Is he a good rusher? Yes. Is he as good of a rusher as Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, these other guys where you get them outside the pocket and they look like they're being electrocuted and they're shooting down the freaking field and you can't tackle them? No, Trey Lance is not that. My closest comp for him, and I hear Cam Newton thrown out there, Trey Lance to me is not a Cam Newton type rusher. He's not. I don't see the same type of physicality. I don't see the same type of decisiveness in his rushing ability. I would look at Trey Lance, and the bucket I sit him in when I look at him as a rusher is Dak Prescott. I think that he could be a guy that we're talking about for his rushing ability in the instance of could he walk backwards into 8 touchdowns on the ground. He could do that. He's got the size. He's got the ability to do that. Is he going to be a guy that rushes for 800 yards in a season or 700? I don't think so, personally. I think that he's more probably in the bucket of around 500 yards, maybe a shade higher. Is that bad? No, that's fantastic. But to the point of where people are talking about him as having this rocket arm, as being this immense mobile quarterback, and those are the things that people lean on as the feathers in his cap of what he does best. I think it's just a tad bit overblown. We're a tad bit out in front of our skis about these skill sets for Trey Lance. But I think he's talented. I think he'd be a good NFL quarterback. But Just trying to give context to, again, all the narratives that we're hearing right now, walking as we get closer to the NFL draft.
Yeah, he definitely needs a lot of polish to his game. I think as he makes this next step into the upper level, the NFL. I'm like you. You see the big splash plays on film and immediately catches your eye, but then once you really kind of dig into the numbers and really kind of pull the detailed data down, there are some inconsistencies to his game, and it depends on what narrative you want to play. That's how you're looking at Trey Lance as a prospect heading in. I would say let's say dream scenario. Where do you think his best fit would be that would provide the best fantasy production?
The best fantasy production for him in his rookie season. I'm not going to say San Francisco at this point. Only because I think if he goes to San Francisco, there is a possibility that Jimmy G starts the year or plays. Because I don't know. And could Jimmy G get dealt while we're on air right now? Could happen. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if San Francisco is going to get the draft capital back to where they're going to just get rid of him, especially if they take on a player like Lance.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say San Francisco here. I think that, honestly, to me, the team that stands out the most, I think that they have the skill set, the weapons, they have a competent rushing attack, they have an underrated defense that, if they could just stay healthy. I like Denver. I really like Denver for him. You airdrop him in Denver's. I mean, you airdrop him in Denver. He's got Sutton. He's got KJ Hamler. He's got Fant. He's got Judy to throw to. He's got a coordinator in Pat Shurmur who, Brandon, I'm old enough to remember when Dimes had a ton of ceiling weeks and we all totally crapped on Daniel Jones coming out as a prospect.
Yep.
If that's what we can see out of Daniel Jones in Shurmur's system, what the hell are we going to see out of Trey Lance? So if you're talking about the skill players around him, a good defense, a good rushing attack, an underrated offensive line that's going to get some guys back, I think that Denver's probably the best case scenario if we're looking at production from Trey Lance.
Yeah, and I think that would be a scenario, too, where you're probably looking at Drew Lock starting the season, similar to probably Jimmy G. You would be smart as a front office to kind of let Trey Lance work his way in. That would be a situation.
Or at least open competition. If the kid balls out, if we have a preseason and he balls out in the preseason, let him go. Let his confidence flourish.
Exactly.
Now, but if it's middling reports, he gets some quarters under his belt in the preseason action, and he's kind of then you're like, okay, well, let's ease you in, kid. Let's ease you in.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think Denver seems to be the most logical fit for me, just because they can protect him a lot more with the weapons around him and add to his skill set that way. So transitioning to the running back position, what every fantasy manager out there loves the most, except for our 0 running back drafters out there. We love you guys, but this is the key position for most fantasy managers as they head into their drafts, their rookie drafts, season-long drafts, whatever you're doing. Najee Harris, top of the board. I don't think there's any question about that heading into the draft, but now we're seeing some reports, mixed in here and there, falling out of the first round. Travis Etienne possibly being the only running back drafted in the first round. How are you gauging that? I mean, Najee Harris, what he brings to the table as a running back coming into the league, I think that's far and away going to be the most productive out of any of these backs coming into the game, right?
Najee and Javonte are in a tier by themselves for me. They're
Correct.
both in the same tier. I have them tier 1 guys. Najee is my RB1. Javonte is my RB2. Look, the last time I looked at betting lines, it was set in 1.5. I think that I would be taking the under on that. I think that we honestly could see no running backs taken in the first round. I think that the back end teams in that first round, could we see one guy fall in there? Sure. But at that line, I'd be taking the under. And there's a lot of stuff out there right now about okay, could the Steelers, and again, we're in smoke season right now. So is that the Steelers putting that out there that they want to go running back? So like the tackle that they want falls to them. That absolutely could be possible. They really need to go freaking offensive line. But as far as the running back prospects, Najee and Javonte are tier 1. That's my RB1, my RB2. Travis Etienne is my RB3. He is in a tier by himself as well. And really, after that, it's another tier of guys that I like. Najee, look, it depends on whatever you want. You want a volume back, Najee can give it to you.
You
want a guy that was leaned on as an integral cog of his offense. Najee did that. You want a guy that can catch passes. Najee can do that. The Matt Forte comps are absolutely, it's been thrown out there a ton, and they're real. Like, I stand by that. I know it's been thrown out there a ton, but if you watch his film, and the parts where, like, can we talk about the pass game usage and glean that to Forte? Sure. The part where I think that the comp sticks for Forte was Forte's innate ability to run in between the tackles and in traffic. And that's where Najee is absolutely successful. The man has footwork of a back that's 210 pounds. He is not a guy that is going to bust off 40-yard runs, 50-yard runs, and I don't really give a shit, to be honest. I don't care about that. What I care about is, can you garner volume? Can you catch passes? Can you bust off 15-yard runs, 30-yard runs? Yes, you could do all those things. Boom, baby. You could be an RB1 in fantasy right now. That's a fact. That's what we want. And so I love Najee Harris. Javonte Williams, if anybody has him as their top back, I can't dispute you. I love Javonte Williams. Threw it out there on Twitter weeks, months ago. Hell, I can't even remember right now because my head's spinning from NFL draft concepts. But Javonte Williams, I've thrown it out there that he is my Cam Akers this year. And everybody knows how much I love freaking Cam Akers. Mm-hmm. I love Javonte Williams. Absolutely love him as a prospect. People are a little bit more down after his pro day and he didn't run that fast. If you expected Javonte Williams to run anything over a 4.5, or should I say under a 4.5, I question what in the absolute hell you were watching. Because Javonte Williams is not going to be the guy that breaks off long runs at the NFL level. Can he do that? Yes. Is that in his skill set to break off a 40 or 50-yard run at the blocking if everything's perfect? Sure. Or he breaks a tackle and now he's into the second level and ain't nobody going to stop him? Sure. Javonte Williams, the other thing about it is that he doesn't get enough love for how good he is in the passing game, Brandon. You look at him last year, amongst all running backs that got, I think it was either 15 or 20 or more targets, the man was 22nd in yards per route run. He stole the pass protection role away from Michael Carter, who had it the entirety of their careers at UNC before that.
Yep.
He could pass protect. He could catch passes. He could garner volume, and he showed you that down the stretch for UNC. Like, the guy is a 3-down workhorse. I don't care that he shared a backfield for Michael Carter. UNC ran their offense to these two really damn good backs who made that offensive line look a whole hell of a lot better than it absolutely is. So Javonte Williams coming in with fresh legs and he hasn't been beat to hell and back at the collegiate level, that's a good thing. I don't care that he didn't have 200 or 300 carries in a year. What are we talking about? Last year at this time, Brandon, we were talking about Jonathan Taylor we should be worried about because he got too much work. Which one is it? Which one is it? Which narrative do we want to play here? He got too much work and he didn't have enough work. How much work is enough work to where you feel good about him, but it's not too much work where you don't feel good about him? Which side of the coin are we on?
It depends. It's what you want to talk about with each prospect. If you want to tear the guy down, oh God, this guy's had 250 carries in college last year. The dude's his legs are gonna be baked by halfway through the year. I mean, you can go either way you want to, but
he didn't have more than 150, so we haven't seen him be a workhorse. I just don't know what he did. How did that work out for everybody that you faded Antonio Gibson? How did that work out?
Don't get me started on Antonio Gibson. My goodness,
I was out there in the streets too, man.
I mean,
I'm a big believer in talent.
Jeez, the 33 touches in college crowd were just loving life last summer.
The context that crowd failed to grasp is that Washington spent a 3rd-round pick on that player that they talked about never got any freaking work.
Yep.
So what did the team, the 2 times we get the clearest chance to understand what a team likes or wants to do, free agency in the NFL draft, that team threw a third-round pick at a player you said didn't get any freaking work.
Yeah.
What should that tell you? They
there was
believe in
a
him.
lot more to the tape that you see with Antonio Gibson, and it's a lot like you see it with a lot of those prospects this year too. I mean, like you mentioned, Javonte Williams, sure, he's not getting all the love in the world, not getting these 250 carries or anything like that, but what you see on film and what he does with the production with the usage that he's given speaks volumes about the kid coming into this league. I mean, after I got done with my initial first viewing of a lot of the film earlier, back in the earlier part of this year, I had Javonte as my number one running back initially.
Mm-hmm.
And as I get through a lot of
love him.
the detailed data and things like that, of course, I switch it up. Najee's my number one right now, so I'm right there with you on 1 and 2. At this point in time, I think that next tier below, I've actually got it as a 2-horse race right now, and I've got Kenny Gainwell there with Travis Etienne.
Okay.
I love Kenny Gainwell. I mentioned it last year when everybody was pining about Antonio Gibson coming in, and he was garnering all that love, very much so. But I was pushing. I mean, let's look at it. Antonio Gibson was pushed off the field and lost these carries because of Kenny Gainwell and what he can do. And not a lot of people are seeing anything with Kenny Gainwell just because of the fact that he opted out last year. Wasn't on the field. Same thing with Trey Lance, like we just mentioned. Everybody's got to dial it back and go back an extra season. It's all this recency bias that we're always guilty of as fantasy managers out there. What have you done for me lately? And that's not, people are looking at Kenny Gainwell. Well, he wasn't on the field last year. Well, he opted out. It was a COVID year. I mean, he was looking out for himself, but same thing with him.
But we'll explain that away for Jamar Chase, but we're going to sit here and dock Kenny Gainwell for it. Okay.
Exactly, right? But I mean, so I've got both of those two at that same tier. I expect, Travis Etienne, it's the same thing with Trevor Lawrence, same thing with Najee Harris. We've seen the production. The guy can absolutely ball out. We know what he can do, whether it be as a pass catcher, whether it be as a runner on the ground. He's got the tools. I think he can succeed at this next level. I think Etienne's going to be a case of where fantasy meets reality, where he lands, the scheme that he's put into. It's very dependent with him, as it will be with Kenny Gainwell. I think they're going to have find that right fit. So scheme dependent. I think that's going to be the situation with a lot of these running backs. After you get through those top two, I mean, it's really a mixed bag. I mean, what you're going to bring to the table with a lot of these prospects after those top two, a lot of differing opinions out there, a lot of chatter out there on Twitter as far as who's next in that line. But I mean, I'm with you. I like Etienne there as well, but also I do have Gainwell in that extra mix there at that same tier. But after that, what do you feel after these top four? I mean, you mentioned Michael Carter. He's getting a lot of love out there as well. I kind of liken him in a way, I liken him a little bit to Jamal Williams and what he can do at the next level. He's not going to be this guy that's going to knock it out of the park, but he can get the job done for you on the field as a pass protector. He can do it as a pass catcher. We've seen Jamal Williams do that. Jamal Williams, up until this past season, the guy was a fantasy title championship winner for most teams. Once Aaron Jones went down and he got the full workload himself, proved to be an actual capable back in the league. And I think that's what you're going to see out of Michael Carter as well. Going to split time, going to be put in a committee-type backfield, I believe, be asked to do similar to what he did in college. So I think Carter's going to be that next guy in this grouping here. But after, I mean, let's look at him. Who do you like outside of this top four, top five for a possible, fantasy potential as early as 2021?
So after Najee, Javonte, Travis Etienne, my top three, I've actually got a tier of guys after that. And Gainwell's in that tier. I like Gainwell. I view Gainwell a little bit differently than some people in his transition to the NFL level. I think that his skills as a receiver, I honestly don't know what a team's. I think a team's going to more likely use him as a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
I threw it out there on our podcast that like I would not be surprised if anybody decided like Ty Montgomery-ish to change him to being a wide receiver. He's that damn good outside. He's really that good. Like you've seen multiple times on film where the guy is running routes, adjusting to back shoulder throws, and he could separate. And so I'm not saying that somebody's going to make him a full-time slot wide receiver or even an outside wide receiver. I'm not saying that at all. But what I think that he's going to be used more as a chess piece at the NFL level. I don't know if he's going to be more of a traditional running back versus being a guy that's going to garner 10 to 12 touches on a weekly basis. Like my comp for Kenny Gainwell was maybe a little bit sexier version of Kevin Falk, is where I sat with him. Yeah. Now, he is in that tier 3 of running backs. There's Gainwell for me. There's Trey Sermon. There is also Michael Carter. I might be blanking on one of my names here as we kind of roll through them. But those three guys are...
that area as well?
Hell, no. Chuba is not in there. No. I am not a Chuba guy. Chuba is... I have a lot of problems with Chuba only because I think his pass game acumen is a little bit overblown and basically a 5-mile-an-hour wind and he falls down. He is a lesser version of Travis Etienne to me, is what Chuba is. Chuba is Travis Etienne if Travis Etienne forgot how to ever break a tackle. That's the way I look at Chuba Hubbard. But he's in tier 4, tier 5. I mean, basically for me, after you get past tier 3, it's all landing spots. It's all a lot of guys. The class for me falls off a ton after my tier 3 guys. Yeah. But I'm pretty high on Michael Carter. Love him. I want him to go in the top 3 rounds. I think that if he goes in round 3, that's the sweet spot. My comp for him walking into the NFL was some combination, and people are going to hate this name because people love to hate on him, and they forget so quick because the hype was deafening in his rookie season. But the man started out before he got hurt in his second year balling out. Just never saw it ever take hold ever again. My comp for him was Chase Edmonds and Amir Abdullah. It was my comp for Michael Carter. The thing I love about Michael Carter is that Michael Carter is a guy that people were talking about his pro day. Again, what were you watching on Michael Carter if you thought he was going to run faster than a 4.5? That's not how Michael Carter wins. Exactly. Michael Carter wins by lateral agility and vision and his ability to eke the most, every little bit of efficiency out of every touch and carry that he's given based off of those said skills. Mm-hmm. So I love that transitioning to the NFL level because as long as he doesn't go to like a bottom 5 team as far as offensive line play, if he goes even to a middle of the road team, Michael Carter is a player that I think that he could walk into a split backfield, and he is a player that's going to maximize every single freaking touch that's given to him. And what's going to happen is, if he does that, what coach is going to say outside of size concerns of, we don't need to give you just a few more touches? And that's where I love Michael Carter, because I think he's going to maximize what you give him, and he's going to earn a little bit more. So Michael Carter at the NFL level, I don't want him to be over a 15 touchback, but I think that he could be a 12 to 15 touchback and be extremely good for us in fantasy. Yeah. So, love Michael Carter. He's definitively in that tier 3. We talked about Kenny Gainwell. I love Trey Sermon, man, and I've been out there talking about him a ton. I think if you look at it, and people want to write him off as a one-hit wonder, and I just don't feel like it's given enough context to what he did and what he's done at the collegiate level. You look at multiple seasons where Trey Sermon has been top 20 amongst all running backs with 75 or more rushing attempts, so taking out these small sample variances with guys. He's been a top 20 back in multiple seasons, 2 years if I count this last one and his first year at college, where he was top 20 in yards after contact per attempt. The man can break tackles. He's fast enough. He's not a burner, but if you look at his short area agility, it's really good. And he's got soft hands. I don't think that he is an immensely skilled pass catcher, but is he good enough to where, because he's a really good pass protector. That needs to be brought up too. He's a good pass blocker. So can you be a guy that, one, is built, if injuries don't knock him down, which he's had a bunch of them, can't write those off. If he can stay healthy, somehow stay healthy, does he have the build and the pass protection skills to be a guy that can garner 15 to 20 touches on a weekly basis? Yes.
Yeah.
I want him to land in a zone scheme, because it's another thing we're talking about context about who Trey Sermon is. Trey Sermon played extremely, extremely well in his first season at Oklahoma, and he was sharing a backfield with Rodney Anderson, who ripped his knee up, was never heard from ever again, who's an extremely talented back as well. If he would have stayed healthy, I loved Rodney Anderson as a player. Loved him coming out of Oklahoma. Just the fact of it is he was never able to come back from that injury.
Yeah, it's a shame what happened to him.
It's a damn shame, man. I loved him as a prospect. Loved him as a runner. Guy had real freaking talent. But looking at it, he shared the backfield with him. Then the 2 years after that, they transitioned to a gap scheme, which Trey Sermon struggled in. All of his metrics tumbled off the freaking table. Then he got hurt. Then he transferred, and he ended up in Ohio State, who ran out the freaking zombie corpse of Master Teague in front of him for most of the season. Who is what he is, man. Master Teague is, if you go back and watch the movie The Program, Master Teague is the older running back that got the ball at first and wasn't any damn good, and they eventually transitioned to the other guy. That's who Master Teague is.
Yeah.
Like, Trey Sermon is that guy, and he showed us that down the stretch. He crushed. He dominated two really good rush defenses in Northwestern and Clemson. Like, these teams, if you look at multiple adjusted line yard metrics, stuff rates, power success rates allowed, top 20 teams in the country, Brandon. And Trey Sermon just ran the damn rock down their throats.
Murdered the guys. He did.
I love him as a prospect, man, because if he goes to a zone scheme, if he gets round 3, round 4 capital, he could really surprise some people at the NFL level. My fever dream is Trey Sermon to Atlanta in round 3 or 4, and that's what I want. Give me that, and we got a chance to see Trey Sermon ball the hell out in his rookie season.
I felt like going into the draft that probably seems like to be the landing spot for Javonte Williams is right there in Atlanta. I don't know why. It feels like that's the spot for him. But I'm with Trey Sermon. I think we're getting the opposite of recency bias with him that we see with a lot of the other prospects, is because everybody wants to forget about how successful he was at Oklahoma prior to the offensive change and the scheme change, like you mentioned. That guy, I mean, he was ripping them apart in Oklahoma those first early, couple years he was there until that transfer. But then everybody wants to use the narrative, well, he couldn't beat Master Teague out earlier on in the season. And that's what they're wanting to use to kind of push down Trey Sermon a little bit as far as what we expect from him moving forward.
These college coaches get to play who they want to, though, too. It's like, you could be really freaking talented, and the college coach, yes, they're going to play the best players. Yes, we all assume rational coaching. How many times do we not have to see it that doesn't always play out? That sometimes if the older guy in the room, the veteran guy on the collegiate team, the guy who's been there for the longest, is playing well enough that they don't lose the job. Like, it might not be like the other guy's not playing well behind him, but he's not, like, they're not willing, the other guy in front of him is not playing bad enough to lose the job to the other guy behind him who could be more talented. I mean, these things happen. It can happen.
We just saw it here in my home state a few years ago. Alvin Kamara continuing to play behind Jalen Hurd. Snap after snap. Butch Jones just out of his damn mind. Couldn't see the difference between the talent level of those two players and just kept trotting out Jalen Hurd, week after week there. But now we see what Alvin Kamara turned into at the next level, an absolute monster. I mean,
you can go back to Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell played over Antonio Gibson. Like, if Gainwell doesn't do the same things, and Tony Pollard. If we talk about all these different things, like, if both of these, like, in 2 or 3 seasons, 2 or 3 years from now, We look at the careers of Antonio Gibson and Kenny Gainwell to that point, and Antonio Gibson is still balling out, and Kenny Gainwell is having an okay NFL career, but not as good as Antonio Gibson. Can we sit here and say, what in the hell were the Memphis coaching staff doing? Like, they played Gainwell over Antonio Gibson. Well, Gainwell must be so freaking good because Antonio Gibson couldn't see the field. Okay, well, the other side of the coin, what if the coaching staff is really good, but they can still make some dumbass decisions because they're human too at Memphis? Like, both of these things can be true.
Capping off the running back position before we switch it up. Last year, everyone, the darling of the running back position last year was James Robinson. Do you see a James Robinson in this class, a guy that we're not looking at, that's further down the board, that can pop out? Because I automatically have a guy that comes to mind myself, but I want to see if you have a name that comes to your mind that can step into the right situation. Maybe an injury pops up in front of him and the guy balls out this year.
There's two guys that, like, could they garner the volume? Do they have the pass game abilities? One guy's been thrown out there, and shout out to my dude, Ray GQ. He was up in the streets talking about him early. So big tips to him on that. Because I'm late on these college prospects. I do not get to college prospects till after the NFL season is over. So February, I dive in. I just don't have the bandwidth in the NFL season. But I'm going to talk to Emory Hunt on my podcast the other day about him. UL guy, Elijah Mitchell. Love him. Extremely damn good. You look at all the different metrics as a rusher. I think he's passable. He's serviceable in the passing game. He can catch the ball. Is that his biggest strength? No. But as a guy that can garner 15 to 20 touches on a weekly basis, was really, really good on paper for every rushing metric that you look at. I think Elijah Mitchell's name needs to be brought up. Another guy, if he were to happen to just fall backwards into... though there's two guys. One of them, if he goes into a team that has a really good offensive line and it's a zone scheme, I think Jermar Jefferson has the one-cut ability to play up as like this year's type of maybe not even James Robinson, because I don't think that his pass game is nearly as good as people think it is. I think that his tackle breaking is not fantastic, but he checks a lot of other boxes. Early career production, played pretty well over the last few seasons. If he goes to his own scheme, could I see him having like a Phillip Lindsay type of year? Possibly. But the other guy that I'll bring up here is Kylan Hill.
Right there,
he has vision concerns. So if he goes to a place where it's going to ask him just to run downhill, more of a gap scheme, and say, okay, hit this hole, hit it hard. I think that he does have the prerequisite athletic measurables. At least he checks the boxes there that are good enough. Yeah. And I think that his pass game usage is good enough. His skills there as a receiver. My only biggest question is that there are some athletic concerns with him that could cap his ceiling. But we could have said the same thing about James Robinson going into last year. Yeah. And if Kylan Hill falls into a spot where he just backs into being the guy, does he have the pass game abilities to play up and be that guy? Sure. And if they put him into a gap scheme, could he be the guy and just be asked to run downhill, hit the hole hard? Yeah, sure. So that's kind of the bucket of guys that I could see maybe coming out of nowhere and surpassing all of our expectations for them.
Yeah, we're seeing eye to eye right there. Elijah Mitchell is, the guy that I've been on for, seems like on a couple of months now. He was popping off the tape when I went through and did a lot of the film study on him. So he does check the boxes, like you mentioned. The same thing with Kylan Hill. He checks those athletic measurable boxes. He looks good. I think what we saw, he got dinged a little bit with what he did while he was down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. The practice down there, like you mentioned, he had a lot of vision issues down there during practice that week, and even during the game. It just could not seem to separate himself on the field during that game. I think a lot of that maybe had to do with some rust and not being on the field, because he didn't play but 3 games, I think, at the early point of the season last year. So I think a lot of that had some issues with he didn't have the feel for the game going into the Senior Bowl practices and things like that. So I think he can work up to a point where there will be some success there. So I agree with you. I think he can do some things in the right spot, right system scheme that can fit his athletic profile. So those two guys, yeah, I'm right there with you, eye to eye there. So we'll transition to and get into the wide receivers to wrap it up and talk about these this group here, the diva position that everyone always likes to mention there. Jamar Chase. It seems like we're doing this with each position. I mean, there seems that ultra, that alpha at the top, and that's Jamar Chase at the wide receiver position. Jamar Chase seems locked and loaded wide receiver one as we move down the board. Just depends on where he's going to fall in the draft. At this point in time, we really don't know. There's speculation, Cincinnati, Detroit, Miami, wherever you want to put him at. But after that, we're getting into a mixed bag. I mean, it's a lot of however you want to talk about each one of these guys. Who do you have after Jamar Chase? Who are your favorites here at this position? And who do you – I mean, I know one guy you mentioned on Twitter today, and I love the guy. You can bring him up and talk about him, but go for it.
Oh, I was on a tear on Twitter. I was salty as hell today on Twitter because I get tired. I'm at the point of the season, Brandon, where I'm just tired of the bullshit, and so I'm just lighting bags on fire and tossing them in whatever direction it just suits right now. Because I get tired of it, man. I get sick of hearing all this ridiculous, idiotic shit on a daily basis, man.
Yep.
And on my tier 2 guys, Devonta Smith. Call him an outlier. Call him a unicorn. Call him 166 pounds, but do not call the guy not talented. He is really damn good at football.
Yes.
And for my tier 2 guys, so I got Chase again. Everybody's got him up at the top where he should be. He should be sitting on the Iron Throne. He is the king. You do not dispute that. If you want to get cute with your rankings and however kind of things you want to talk about on social media, if you don't have Jamar Chase at 1...
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it for the clicks. That's fine. That's fine. You make your own bed, and Jamar Chase will put you to bed later. He'll rock you to sleep. But Devonta Smith is in tier 2. He is hugging up right next to Rashad Bateman. That has been my wide receiver 2 and 3. That has not changed, only because nobody's come for the mantle. Diving through all these prospects, there's not been a guy that has cemented himself to me to be the person that can knock those two out of that tier.
But Bateman's just a slot guy. Come on,
oh,
Derek.
Jesus shit. Oh, my God.
I'm going to bring it up just to fire you up.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. All right. You hold on. Let me roll my sleeves up for this one. All right.
Because the same as you know as well as I do, he played all those slot snaps last year just to get different looks and different route tree concepts and things like that. The guy is an alpha on the outside. Point blank.
Rashad Bateman is an X. He's a true X. And if you lead off with any type of statement and talk about what he did in the slot, I'm sorry, but it's a fact. You're telling on yourself. You're telling on yourself hard. That all you did was look at 2020, and you need to go back a little bit farther, boo-boo, because you need context. Okay? And we're going to give it to you right here. Rashad Bateman is a true X. Rashad Bateman was a true X when Tyler Johnson was there, when Tyler Johnson played the slot. Rashad Bateman had COVID this last year, and if you watch the 2019 tape versus the 2020 tape, you will see a guy that looked nothing like the guy you saw in 2019. He looked like he didn't have the same explosion. He was playing a different role. He was playing when Tanner Morgan is a not good quarterback. Tanner Morgan is not an NFL-level quarterback. Tanner Morgan is not somebody we will ever be talking about as being a starting, really, really good NFL quarterback. Okay? So let's get that out of the way as well. Rashad Bateman played as the outside X in multiple seasons, broke out from an early age. He can separate. He can win downfield. He's a tactician. He can run after the catch. You look at 2018 and you watch 2019 tape. You look at yards per route run. You look at all different types of metrics. Rashad Bateman is a stud. I talked about this weeks ago, Brandon, up in freaking February. Talked about it with Thor on our podcast. I left that episode because I was like, the Minnesota man's going to come into the house and we're going to spit some love today about Rashad Bateman. And it happened, man. And it was beautiful. And Rashad Bateman is that guy that deserves to be drafted in the first round. And you're hearing that now. Yep. It should have been talked about weeks and months ago. because he deserved it then. He deserves it now. He's a top 20 pick in the NFL draft, or at least he sure as hell should be. Yep. I don't know if he's going to go there. If he falls outside of the first round, I'm going to say here and now, a team is getting a freaking steal. Yes, if they get him in the second round. If he falls outside of the first round, some team better be calling Jacksonville and trying to trade up, or the Jets, and trade up into that first freaking pick. Like, giving them stuff to get to that first pick, the same way Cincinnati did with trying to get T. Higgins.
How would he not go past the Green Bay Packers at the end of the first round? I mean,
the Packers not draft a wide receiver. The Packers there's a whole lot of dumbass in that front office, man. That's all I can say.
That's a whole other podcast in itself.
Good Lord. Like, it's all kinds of craziness. Like, you see LaFleur drafting guys where he's trying to do different Shanahan-esque things, trying to get an H-back, trying to incorporate a lot of different scheme elements and stuff like that. If they didn't have Devontae Adams, they would be in a world of damn hurt right now.
Yes.
And whether they draft or they don't draft a guy, whatever, man. I mean, I think that the real possibilities, not even Green Bay. I look at Kansas City could address wide receiver if they don't go tackle. I look at Baltimore. And everybody wants to absolutely shit on the Baltimore landing spot. Look, I understand Lamar Jackson has struggled at times as a passer.
Yeah.
Can we also talk about Marquise Brown is not a true one? As much as I love Miles Boykin, he's struggled. Willie Snead ain't it.
Willie Snead is not the answer.
Outside of Mark Andrews, who in the absolute hell has Lamar Jackson been throwing to, man?
Yeah.
So you give him a guy that can operate as a true X. And I'm not saying that it's absolutely sexy. I'm not telling you that the volume is going to be great. But could Bateman step in there and garner a 20% target share and walk out of the season with 100 targets? We all said the same thing, and we all just shit on A.J. Brown's landing spot and talked about how terrible that was. I'm old enough to remember when we all did that.
I mean,
and A.J. Brown's a damn stud.
That was
but you're talking about a run-first offense. And now everybody loves A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown proved he was that dude on little volume.
Yeah.
I mean, what's to stop Rashad Bateman from doing the same damn thing, man? And he gets first-round draft capital behind him, so you know the opportunity is going to be there. So I'm not as down on that landing spot as other people, but I mean, yes, Kansas City is in the mix. I think that any of those teams near the end of the first round could take a luxury pick. Sure. I don't think that Tampa Bay goes with it. Could they? Maybe. I mean, Mike
possibly
Evans is
New
not
Orleans
exactly
down there as well.
New Orleans could take a guy right there. I mean, there's a lot of different teams to where Rashad Bateman could go at the end of the first round. But yeah, I mean, Smitty is that guy. He's that dude. Yep. I went on rants about it on Twitter today. I don't give a shit that he's 166 pounds. If you're talking about he's 166 versus 170. The thing that didn't get talked about, and I'll leave it. I don't delete a damn thing. I'll leave the receipts out there. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm going to own it. I'm leaning into a guy that, yes, I understand if you look at all kind of historical measurements, he's an outlier. That's fine. I've seen enough from a guy coming from a freaking SEC school that led an offense to a national title and a Heisman, and every freaking team on a weekly damn basis knew it was Devonta Smith and Najee Harris and a whole hell of a lot at them coming at you on a weekly basis, and nobody could stop him, man. Could somebody throw it at me? Why the hell couldn't they stop it? If he's 166 pounds and you could press him and you could take him out of the game plan and he's not really that freaking good and he can't separate and he can't do all these freaking things because he's skinny, then tell me why no collegiate team could stop him. Tell me. I would love, and nobody can tell me that. Like, then why did he get all this production? Oh, well, Jalen Waddle wasn't there. Does anybody realize that in 2019 he led the freaking team in receiving touchdowns and receiving yards before even 2020? Before Jalen Waddle went out? You don't hear that in the streets?
No, you do not.
No, you don't. Devonta Smith is that good. And so and so is Rashad Bateman. Those are my tier 2 guys. And after that, I've got a long tier of other guys that could sneak into the back end of the first round. And this is the part where I insert all my Terrace Marshall love. Absolutely love the guy. Been loving him. Gonna still love him. He was the guy for LSU before he opted out. You could talk for days, weeks, months about how good the freaking LSU receivers surrounding him are. We could also talk about, and that's not discussed a whole hell of a lot, how shitty the quarterback play was for LSU in this past season, that he caught passes from 3 different guys, and none of them are great, who each of them had 130 passing attempts, and trying to get on the same page as the number 1 in that offense.
Yeah.
But you don't hear that talked about, do you?
You don't.
But Terrace Marshall is that good. He has the size, he has the ability to separate, he has the speed, because I heard earlier in the draft circuit before he blazed a 40 that he was slow, or at least on film when people watched him, he was slow.
Ooh.
Don't hear those chirpings anymore either. But anyway, I'm going to move on. Love Terrace Marshall. All the first round buzz is very deserved. His ceiling is extremely high. I looked at him as a sexier version of Devontae Parker. So he has that ability to possibly be a 1 in an offense. And then really it just comes down to like all these other different tier guys that like, they check a lot of analytical boxes. Early career production, extremely good pro days. Whether you want to go with Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, those guys are in this same tier. And Jalen Waddle. I know I've buried him a little bit in all this discussion. Jalen Waddle, I love him. I absolutely love Jalen Waddle. The only reason I don't have Jalen Waddle in the same tier as Devonta Smith and Rashad Bateman is my comp for Jalen Waddle and the way that I think he's going to be utilized the best at the NFL level. I look at him as Tyler Lockett. I don't think that could he be a number 1 for a passing offense? Sure. Do I think that he's best suited to be a number 1 for a passing offense? Not necessarily. Yeah. But I think that he could walk into every single game on a weekly basis, get 6 to 7 targets, be efficient as hell at them, and have ceiling weeks. So I love the guy. He's going to be a highly invested pick in the NFL draft. He's just not the guy that, if I'm tiering guys and I'm looking at ceiling outcomes and guys that can be true alphas in their offense, I just don't view Jalen Waddle that way. As talented as he is, I love him. I really, really do, and I'm not throwing shade at him, but I'm not putting him in tier 2 versus guys that I think that could be future alphas in their offense and garner 140, 150 targets possibly.
Yeah, he seems to. That's the interesting thing about Waddle is he seems like he's on this rocket ship ride that was similar to that of Henry Ruggs last year.
Yep.
Both coming from the same offense, and now we're getting into the same talk with him heading into the draft. Earlier today, you've got a lot of people that are mocking him. The Arizona's going to trade into the top 10 to get Jalen Waddle inside the top 10, but I'm with you. I mean, I don't feel like there's that wide receiver 1 mentality out on a Waddle that he's going to be utilized in an offense to become a wide receiver 1 like that. So I'm kind of seeing eye to eye with you on that one. We mentioned the size issue with Devontae Smith, the weight issue coming out earlier today, and everybody wants to bag on that. So if you want to flip it to another reason, size differential, Rondell Moore, Mighty Mouse himself. I mean, how are we feeling? We can talk about the weight issue with Devontae Smith, and even though he's still great with that weight issue, Rondell Moore, everybody wants to bag on the guy because of his height, and there's never been a wide receiver that's so small to excel at the next level. The guy can ball. I mean, there's no bones about it. The guy is a baller on the field, and he's an absolute stud when you look at the guy and all the athletic comparables that he has as well.
All right, I'm going to throw this back at you, Brandon. All right, tell me this. When a guy is 5'7" and has a 42-inch vertical versus a guy that's 5'11" and has a 37-inch vertical, a 38-inch vertical, do they high point the ball at the same damn spot pretty much? If we're talking about all things are equal?
Very close, yeah.
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 So do I care about the fact that he's 5'7"? No, I don't care at all. I really don't, because I look at Rondell Moore as a guy that's going to be used in space. Yes. My comp for him is Brandon Cooks, and that's why I hope that he lands in New Orleans. Because I think that he could be utilized in transitioning to the NFL level in a lot of the same ways. Utilize him in space. I think Rondell Moore in the very, very, and it's extremely small. So a lot of this is projecting. I'll own that. But when we did see Rondell Moore, and I cobbled together all 3 years of his usage to try to get a better overall picture of what he did at the collegiate level and what he was asked to do in the very small samples that he was asked to do it. Was he used in the very short intermediate games a ton? Yes, everybody's discussed that at length. We all know that. The thing that people have not discussed enough is that when Rondell Moore was asked to go down the field, he was successful doing it, man. Without the numbers in front of me, he had over 100. It was either 100 or 110 passer rating on targets of 20 or more yards down the field. Now, you're looking at an extremely small sample, and yes, there's a lot of variance with these numbers. But in watching that and marrying it to the film and looking at his first season where you get a little bit more of a complete picture, and also accounting for not great quarterback play because, well, Jamie
that's
Newman's
what I was going to bring up.
Like, all these different factors, Rondell Moore, I honestly think as long as he could stay healthy, we haven't seen the best out of him yet. Because I think that if he gets into an offense that's going to allow him to accentuate the things that he does well right now, and also branch out into some of the things that I think that he can do, like win down the field. I think that he is a better route runner than people give him credit for. I think that he separates off the line. I think he has good enough footwork to do so. That if he gets into a scheme with a smart as hell offensive head coach, like a Sean Payton, if he were to fall to and land, and we talked about this with Pat Crane on my podcast, if he falls to, say, a Buffalo, and he can operate out of the slot, and he's a long-term replacement for Cole Beasley there. Mm-hmm. These different types of landing spots could help Rondell Moore actualize the ceiling that we all believe and hope is there, considering all of the raw physical abilities that he has. I don't care that he's 5'7". When you have a vertical leap that puts you in the same type of literally puts you in the same type of airspace as guys that can't leap as high as you, that are 3 to 4, maybe even 5 inches taller than you, I don't care that you're 5'7". Yeah. Because that point is moot when you can jump out of the damn gym.
So, we're talking about the rise of Jalen Waddle and, how he kind of keeps increasing as we get closer and closer to the draft. The guy that's kind of seems to go in the opposite direction right now, I know I want to kind of get your take on him real quick. It's Kadarius Toney. Was so high 3 months ago. Everyone was loving on Kadarius Toney, and now here we are a week away from the draft. Absolute crickets on the guy.
He shouldn't have been that high to begin with. I think that was a lot of people watching highlight reels. I think it's a lot of like just and that scouts, man. But how many guys like this? How many Henry Ruggs players? How many Darius Hayward Bays? How many all kinds of these different players that could run fast, that could put up some damn highlight reel plays that we got to see, man. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Kadarius Toney, but there's context to that, because you look at a guy that played quarterback. He entered Florida. They didn't know what the hell to do with him. He has injuries, and a lot of other various things take place. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's not talented, but for fantasy purposes, you got to do a lot of squinting and a lot of explaining to me to sit here and tell me that he can be a high volume receiver at the next level. If he does so, he is an outlier. And the other thing about it is, I think that he's a more raw prospect. He doesn't come in as polished as a lot of these other guys. And I can't for the life of me understand like him being a top 20 pick in the NFL draft outside of like a team projecting and talking about, oh my gosh, like at his ceiling, what could he be? And really trying to shoot for the stars based off of other players in the league that they think that if we catch lightning in a bottle, could we get this out of this guy? Yes, but I also think that's chasing stars, man. It's chasing things that probably more likely are not going to happen. So my co-host Adam Pfeiffer is really, really high on Kadarius Toney, and I get it. And I understand the people that are. It's just the way that I analyze prospects, the things that I look at, and looking at him overall and his skill set, I'm lower on him, man. Like, I think that he shouldn't have been hyped to the point where he was a top 20 pick. I don't think that he's a first-round talent. I don't think that he has the skill set, and at this point in his career, should even be discussed in the first round. Second-round pick? Sure. You want to take him somewhere in the middle of the back end of the second round? Absolutely fine. Totally understand that.
Yeah, that's the thing when you look at him. You see the splash plays, you see a lot of that. The broken tackles in open space, things like that. A lot of the things, that jump out to the eye, and you're immediately caught off guard, of course. But when you really dig down into the film and you start to look at a lot of the analytical side of things, the route tree concepts were just not that great. What you mentioned as well is polish. He's not very polished when it comes to how he breaks off routes, how he proceeds through routes. I mean, there's a lot of work that's going to happen with him coming into the next level. And you're at this point now, if you do take him, back in first round, sometime point early in the second round, it is a reach at this point in time. You're reaching for the potential instead of drafting for the actual value. And I think that's where we're finally kind of seeing this common ground with Tony as he's slid down the board somewhat. So outside of those guys that we mentioned, further on down the board, give me a player, give me a name at this position that you like that's not really getting the talk, not getting the love. We'll throw him out there as we wrap up this position.
There's a few different guys you can try to kind of toss into this bucket, at least guys that check different analytical boxes.
Yeah.
We discussed Seth Williams. I know he's been talked about a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
I like Seth Williams. I don't think I like Seth Williams as much as other people do. I look at him as at the ceiling range of his outcomes and his skill set. If he doesn't get any better and improve and shore up some other areas of his game, like separation at the next level, I look at him as a poor man's Mike Williams. Could that be good for us in fantasy? Sure.
Yeah.
But I think that he deserves some love. Another guy that I could see actualize a ceiling if he lands into the right spot. Only because we've seen the player that I closely comped him to, being Nelson Aguilar, walk into some good fantasy production. Dyami Brown has gotten a lot of talk out there. I like him. I think that he's a good deep threat. He separates. I got some. I would like him to be stronger at the catch point. Yeah. Can he track the ball deep? Can he separate? Yes, he can do all those different things. We comped him anywhere to Nelson Aguilar at his floor to maybe, if he cleans up some of these things, he's asked to be a 1 or at least a 1B in an offense. Could he walk into some Jeremy Maclin type seasons? Possibly. The skill set's there. So yeah. Those are the two guys that I see the path. I definitely think that this wide receiver class falls off. I think that this we talk about, or at least we hear about how deep this draft class is. I think it's deep in some areas, but at the skill position players, I think at wide receiver and running back, there are definitive cliffs for me. I think the tight end position is a little bit deep. Well, I'm not going to say deeper. I like the top 5 guys quite a bit, maybe more than some other people. But I think that there's definitive cliffs, and they're pretty big cliffs for me, Brandon, like in the running back and wide receivers.
Yeah, a lot of middling type of prospects once you get to a certain point in both of those positions, especially. So I agree with you there. Dyami Brown, man, we're right on there with both of those.
Do you like him too? I saw you were like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you mention him, I mean, he's one of those guys you don't really see him talked about that much. Especially he's starting to kind of get a little bit of traction as we get closer to next week. But yeah, I mean, I watched a lot of North Carolina games last year live. I mean, film work was already kind of instilled in me from what I watched last year alone. But I mean, he's got everything that I would want in a consistent, steady prospect at the position. That's how I view Dyami Brown. He's not going to be that guy that's going to go out and produce wide receiver 1 numbers week in and week out. He might flash some weeks here and there, but he's a consistent, steady producer, I think, in the right place, right fit. When it boils down to it, that's what we're talking about at each one of these positions, I believe, running back and wide receiver especially. We hear it every year, and we're going to really preach it this year as well. Landing spot. All these guys are going to be very landing spot dependent on what they're going to do as far as fantasy production moving forward. But, man, yeah, we wrapping it up. Great to have you on, Derek, man. I'm glad you could come on. Glad to finally get to talk to you in person, face-to-face like this. It's been an awesome experience. We're all smarter for having you on this podcast this evening. I'll tell you that right now.
Far too kind, man. I got my takes just like everybody else. I'll swing and I'll hit some, and some I'll miss. It's just how it goes.
We're in the industry, both of us. It comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. We celebrate our wins, but you got to take it on the chin when you hit a loss, man.
Oh
That's how
yeah.
it is. I mean, that gets you more respect in this industry more than anything. Is if you can tell people that, yeah, I was wrong about that. So yeah, we're both there, right
Oh
there
yeah.
together. But
I'm team no delete, man. The receipts are out there. I got takes and takes for days, man.
same,
Is what it is, you know.
man. So
So
plug what you got, man. So tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter. Let them know what you're doing right now.
yeah, so follow me on Twitter at dbro_ffb. My co-host and I got 4 to 5 episodes rocking weekly for Fade the Chalk. We're basically anywhere you could find podcasts, as well as we've been doing some YouTube work for FTN. So over at FTN Network, over at YouTube, I've got right now. I looked at it this morning. We've got best ball episodes. We have got Dynasty episodes live. We've got over, I think we're close to 20, we're getting close to 30 prospect profiles that we've dug into for the podcast. As well as I've got a bunch of write-ups for prospect profiles, all for free. Go check them out at FTN Fantasy, as well as all of the best ball content. I got a lot of underdog stuff coming out, and a lot of stuff that's already live. We talked about all these rookies. I've got my guide live on ftndaily.com about how to approach these rookies right now in best ball drafts. Looking at all things like EDP, so where could they go, as well as their skill sets, and really kind of dicing up like buckets and where you need to be valuing these players, man. But yeah, all my content can be found spread across all arms of FTN. So ftnfantasy.com, ftndaily.com, and ftnbets.com. But yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. This has been a long time in the works, man. I know we've talked back and forth.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate you having me on. Ton of fun, man. Love being able to just shoot the shit with you for a good hour plus, man. So
Yeah,
thank
man.
you for having me.
Man, it's an honor, man. I was glad to have you on. We'll have to do this again sometime, especially. Yeah, you're always welcome here with the Woo Fantasy Podcast here, definitely. So we'll look to have you on again in the future, obviously. So as things go for me, of course, at Roto Superstar on Twitter, I just dropped my Dynasty pre-draft rookie running back rankings on Roto Baller earlier today. So go check those guys, check those out. Help me out there. Give us a look-see there. But as always, find us here at Woo_Fantasy. Check out all the great content on rotoballer.com. Promo code WooFantasy for the premium content at checkout. Get you a discount there, guys. So until later, we will see you again on another episode of Woo Fantasy.